Dragon Dreams. I'm Ivan, and my channel is about indie, old school, and unconventional role playing games. So today I'm going to be doing a review of Advanced Crimson Dragon Slayer 2024 by Venger Satanis. So the original Crimson Dragon Slayer D20 is a rules-lite game. It uses the D20 system. It's kind of like 5e meets basic. It's extremely pared down. It's very easy. You can make a character in 30 seconds probably. You almost don't need character sheets. And if you're looking for a rules-lite system, I think it's really quite good. Now, Advanced Crimson Dragon Slayer, or ACDS, is basically the same thing but with a bunch of additional optional rules added. There's no new classes. Venger makes this primarily for his setting Chalt. And the one thing I kind of disliked is that in the old versions of Crimson Dragon Slayer, there was always this concept that you could play this with anything. Let me explain a little bit about Chalt, because I think it's important to understand that in order to understand some of the really weird stuff in this game. This post-apocalyptic desert wasteland fantasy, like science fantasy setting. Okay, and my view of it is it's basically take every grade B fantasy, science fiction, and after nuclear war movie from the 70s and 80s, put it into a blender, add the Cthulhu mythos, up the sleaze factor, and you get Chalt. So it's deliberately cheesy and satirical. It also deliberately has stuff that is meant to be effed up, and that's what Venger likes, and that's, the genre that he's doing. And for what it is, I actually think that it's quite good. I mean, judging it on its own terms, I think that Venger did quite a good job of capturing that feeling. So let me just dive in to ACDS. All right, so let's dive in. So we have 2024 Zoth streaming down the cover. So Zoth is this yellow stuff in Chalt. Okay, so let's go directly to character creation. So you pick a name, class, race, alignment, something noteworthy. And warriors get 1d10 hit points per level and inflict a d10 damage. So the damage is based on class, not on weapon type. It's one of the rules-lite aspects of the game. They also get, they add their level to attacks and damage. Sorcerers get a d4 hit points per level and inflict d4 damage. They expend HP to cast spells. And there's also, if they wear any armor, there's a 10% chance per armor class that the spell will fail. So they normally would not wear armor if you don't want their spells to ever fail, but if you want to wear some armor, you can, which I really like. I like the flexibility to be able to choose to do that. So, and then finally you roll a d20 gold pieces for your character for starting. Okay, and then priests get d8 hit points per level. They inflict d8 damage. They get healing invocation, where they can heal. They also have Eldritch Beam, which is kind of like the turn undead ability. Okay. Thieves get a d6 hit points per level. Their damage is d6. They get standard thief abilities, and they can also backstab at advantage to attack and triple damage. That's kind of cool. He has an advertisement for VengerCon 3. I went to VengerCon 1, and it was a lot of fun. So here we get the races, and humans get an additional 2 hit points. I really like that. Dwarves. So here he's where he starts mixing things up between the races and the Chalt races. This to me looks like a Chalt race. The standard dwarf in old Crimson Dragon Slayer was a lot different from this, and I really wish he had kept that. I think it should be backwards compatible if you're doing an advanced version of the game, and he should have moved this and call it Chalt Dwarf and move it down into the Chalt races. Halflings get a +2 to armor class due to their short stature. Gnomes can cast an illusion once per day. Elves get advantage on saving throws versus spells. Dark elves can use sleep poison. Half orcs get a 1 die up on their damage die, whatever class they're in, because they're strong. Demons can try to tempt people. Okay, pixie fairies. Now, pixie fairies, I think what he means is they're pixies if they're men and fairies if they're women. Otherwise, it's kind of a weird name. I would just call them pixies and get rid of the fairy part. But basically, they do less damage, die less damage, but everybody else is on disadvantage to hit them because there's these little guys who are flying around. They're really hard to hit. Crystal humanoids take half damage for high-tech energy attacks. Reptilians, basically lizard folk, can do this cannibalistic rite once per day where they eat an enemy's heart, and they get a special ability. I think that's really cool. Dark, but he likes dark. And then droids cannot be killed, but they can be deactivated if they take enough damage, and somebody who knows tech can rebuild them. They also have a 2 in 6 chance of interfacing with technology, but they're not a good race for sorcerers because they cannot use their own hit points to fuel spells. I would not play a droid sorcerer. That would be really difficult. Some of these really, I think, belong in the Chult, like the crystallines, I think, belong in the Chult-specific races, along with the Chult dwarves. So he has Infernal Elf. They can employ deceit, treachery, wickedness, and betrayal. You have Moon Elves, who are granted advantage on enticing others into carnal delights. Blood Elves get advantage on their first strike. Sky Elves can fly short distances. Midnight Elves are surrounded in darkness, so they can... Well, when they're surrounded in darkness, they're virtually undetectable. Sun Elves, in full daylight, they roll an additional d4 on a d20 roll. And then Velvet Elves, Blue Velvet Elves, get d4 added to all their rolls. But there's a 2 in 6 chance that somebody's hunting them for their pelts to make smoking jackets. Chult, again, is really dark. It's effed up. It's supposed to be effed up. So, if it's not your thing, don't play it. Rainbow Elves are empathetic. There's these guys called Grogs who are sand constructs. And they can turn themselves into a grain of sand. Or back to their humanoid form. That's kind of cool. The Vor, I don't feel like he really explains a Vor well enough here. We played one, or I had a fellow player who played one at VengerCon 1, so I kind of know more about it than he's describing. But basically, they can swallow their victims if their victims fail a saving throw. I think this is way too powerful, given that, as we'll see, saving throws are really hard to make. And then the Sims are these humanoids. They're forbidden to show their face. Okay, so they have extrasensory perception. It's a little bit off. I don't know what he means by Val Kilmer's Elvis. I've seen Elvis in True Romance, but I don't quite know what he means in that context. Lizard Tours are basically like, think like lizard person centaur, okay? And they have special abilities that they can use better the better they get. Crustaceans get like crab people basically get a 1 damage reduction per level. I would limit this to like capping out at 3rd, because at 10th level, a fighter will never be able to do any damage. No class in the game will ever be able to do any damage to them. I guess a half-orc, technically, who rolled an 11 or 12 who's a fighter. But, yeah. Cactus folk. Okay, they can heal up to max hit points by bathing in the sun for an hour. Well, that's kind of cool. Okay. And then we have Sleaze Factor 5. So basically, if you want to make the game significantly easier, there's kind of like a dial that the GM can turn up to make it a lot easier. X cards. So there's this controversial concept with real X cards, or conventional X cards, which most of us, I think, in the community really dislike, which is this concept that if you're triggered by something in the game, you can hold up a card with an X on it, and the GM has to change things to suit you. And most of us just think this makes no sense. If you're really that far gone mentally, you need help. You shouldn't be playing role-playing games until you've gotten your emotions under control. But he has a whole different thing with, like, you can put up an Eldridge or Gonzo or like, sleaze, grindhouse exploitation, and this is a clue to the GM. This something you want more of. So it's almost like he's turned them on their head, basically. I don't think I do them. I think I just check in with my players about what they want at the end of each session. But it's kind of cool. Okay, alignment. He has the traditional law, chaos, and neutrality. Now, one thing he's taken out is he used to have a fourth one, which was your own made-up ethical system, and for some reason he's taken that out. I don't know what happened to that, which makes this not backwards compatible. But he's also added these abilities that you have for your alignment, which is a neat idea. For lawful, at third level, you can get use of the government or institutional support. For chaotic, at third level, you can get divine faith for communion. Now, I don't understand what this has to do with chaos. The lawful one makes sense, although I think I'd give rabble rousing to the chaotic person, make them like create discord. And there's no special power for neutrality, so I'm not quite sure why they don't have a special power. But it's kind of an interesting idea. Something noteworthy. Okay, so you can make something noteworthy about your character. Some more cool art. Combat is your basic D20 system. Initiative goes in chorps order. So that's thieves first, then warriors. B is enemy, and R is retainers. P is priests, and S is sorcerers. So that always goes in that order. It makes things a lot faster. I don't know if it's what everybody would want. Armor class is your standard D20 thing. He has rules for two-handed, dual-wielding weapons, ranged weapons, and high-tech and magical weapons, as well as for critical hit. Crimson Escalation, which is this thing that's kind of cool. Also, he has a 0 hit point concept where you can go to negative level in hit points, which I like. For saving throws are really hard in this game. So you have to get a 20. You add your level to a d20 roll, and you have to get a 20, which seems a lot harder than in like basic D&D. But then again, it's supposed to be for a dark setting. You know, life is cheap and they're hard. Lavender Moon Dice. So this is a really cool concept. So you have this concept that there's 7 times in a character's life when they can try to do something really extraordinary. They roll a single d6. If they roll a 1, that the demon possesses their soul. If they roll a 2, it just fails. 3, 4, and 5, it's a success. And 6 is a critical success. And if you do a ritual involving an infernal glyph, Zoth, which as I said is this yellow ooze in Chalt, or a humanoid sacrifice, you get an advantage on it. Now, Chalt, as I said, is this really effed up, warped setting, okay, which is a post-apocalyptic. It's like it's been taken over by demons. There aren't really good gods in the conventional sense. So, you know, there's sort of this part of the darkness of Chalt is coming through here. You know, I really like that rule. So, anyway, enough said about that. I think in my games I'd probably not use the glyph, Zoth, and human sacrifice part. Okay, sorcery. So, first of all, there can be only one spell cast at a time. Spell casting is used by sacrificing hit points, which correspond to the level of the spell you want to cast. And if reduced to 0, you fall unconscious and must make a saving throw or die. Okay. But the spell seal goes off, which is kind of a cool idea. and you can do like a humanoid sacrifice or something to demons to use the hit points of the person you sacrificed for your magic. It's a very Avenger thing. It's a very Chalt dark, kind of a thing. You can also, when I played with him, he also said that you could have a willing um, person to like draw blood from or something like that, which I think is a better way to do dark rituals. I think the problem I have with the dark rituals is that I think they're kind of a game breaker, because if I were playing this game, I'd just use it all the time and get all the spells that I wanted. More cool art. And we have the spell list, and you'll see that these are basically kind of like the classics from basic D&D from the 80s. Some of them are renamed. Fireball is the one weird one, which is you roll a d6, you consult a table. On a 1, every member of your party takes 10 hit points. On 2, everybody in the area of effect takes 1 hit point. 3 is 10 hit points in the area of effect. 4 is 20 hit points in the area of effect. 5 is 40 hit points. And 6 is all your enemies just instantly die. Now, this is a dangerous enough spell to cast that I don't think I'd use it, honestly. I'd really go much more for the level d6 system that you get in classic D&D. And I don't know, I think, and plus this is less rules-lite. I think I'd go with LD6 because, makes more sense. It's more rules-lite to do it that way. And finally, he has Wish as a 6th level spell. If you want to do it as a ritual, it takes 18 hit points. I think this is a little bit game-breaking, I sort of feel like. It's a neat idea, but I think Venger could come up with a really awesome, really sick and twisted way to do a wish that's better than this, and it's not as exploitative as this by the players, because I'd be casting wishes all the time if I was a high-level sorcerer. Optional rules. Okay, Sign of the Tentacle, you can get a +1 on any roll, once per session, I think, if you make the Sign of the Tentacle. Flashback, this is a great rule. If you're making a saving throw, if you tell a flashback of a memory of the character's life, you get advantage on that save, which encourages you to roleplay and it encourages immersion. I really like this because saving throws are really hard in this game, and this kind of counterbalances it. Gilded Die, I'm not really sure why. I don't really get this because it feels too much like Lavender Moon dice. If you roll a 1 or a 2, it fails. If you roll a 6, it's critical success. Everything in between is a success. And I don't understand how often you can do it. Divine Favor is... I don't know if he explains it as in traditional Crimson Dragon Slayer, he explains that you get a reroll once per session. But he's saying at the GM's discretion, you could also use this to recharge an ability, a skill, a power, something like that, instead of getting your reroll. Okay? Which is kind of a cool idea. Level jump, okay, so you can do Lavender Moon dice to level up. Fallen Comrade, I really love this. So the idea is if one of your members of your party goes down, everybody else who's still up in that party gets an extra die to add to their next roll, which is higher the higher the level is of the Fallen Comrade. So I think that's really cool. And I think my favorite is last. So Almost Worse Than Death is basically if you die, you can kind of like make a deal with the Grim Reaper and for like a demon to take you as a slave or something that's worse than death. And if the GM agrees, then you can keep playing your character. And I think this is a really great compromise because there's this debate that's been going on in our community between those of us who think PCs should just die and people who think the PCs should never die. And like most of us think that it's not really a game if your PCs can't die. I mean, why have rules? Why have hit points? But this is a really nice alternative to that, which is basically saying if your PC is that precious to you, if you really are in love with them and you want to keep them going, like, well, what really awesome, dark, effed up thing would you be willing to take on for your character that would make you want to still play your characters? So first of all, I would have liked to have had more classes. I was kind of hoping when I heard advanced version is coming out that he'd have more classes, like just like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons has more classes than basic D&D, and it does not. I would have liked a ranger. I could see not having paladins because it wouldn't make sense for Chult. Um, but oh well. Races, there's definitely a lot more races as you've seen. But as I've said in going through it, I'm really disappointed that he doesn't really distinguish very clearly between Chult specific races and generic races. He claims to, but his dwarf is definitely a Chult dwarf. The crystalline is definitely a Chult specific being. I suppose it could be in science fantasy, but it's not typically in in Dungeons and Dragons. And I think you really should have moved those down, as I said, to the Chult races, and then call the dwarf a Chult dwarf, and then take the old dwarf, which I think had some sort of special power that he got rid of, so it's no longer backwards compatible for dwarves, and move that up to the mainstream classes. Secondly, I would really love to see cleric spells, because he does this really great job of taking kind of like the best of magic user spells, and it only has like a small handful of them, but it has kind of that old-fashioned feel of the old days when there's a short spell list. I really like a lot of the new rules. They have this effed up feel, but as I said, I think that's a plus because that's what he's going for in Chult. Now, the one other negative that I have is I'm not quite sure what makes it advanced, because when I first heard it was coming out, I was sort of thought it's like you have Holmes Basic from 1977, and then you have Advanced Dungeons and Dragons from like a few years later, and Advanced Dungeons and Dragons is probably like 10% of the rules are Holmes Basic, and everything else is a whole bunch more advanced rules. I think it would have been better if he just called it Crimson Dragon Slayer 2024, Crimson Dragon Slayer, I don't know what version he's on, E3 or something, because I feel like advanced kind of signals the wrong thing. But apart from that, it seems really cool. I mean, again, he has a particular genre, he has a particular thing that he's trying to do, and for that purpose, it's well done. I guess my only thing is what I liked about original Crimson Dragon Slayer is the sense to which you could use it for any fantasy game, and then when you hit Chult, you can get effed up with it, and this, I feel like he doesn't decouple clearly enough what the differences are. But overall, honestly, for all that, I actually think it's really quite good. So I'm going to give this a 4. Okay, a 4 out of 5. I'm not giving it a 5 for the reasons that I've already explained. I think that it could use some work, but I think it's actually quite good. It's quite playable. He has some really neat ideas in there, and I think that this is a good member of the rules-lite sort of D&D-ish games. It's definitely top rate. I would put it up there with, Knave or one of those other like really, really rules-lite systems as being well done, well thought through. So that's that. Let me know what you think of it. Have you played Crimson Dragon Slayer? Have you tried out the advanced rules? If you've never played it before, what are your thoughts about this? Feel free to tell me in the comments. All right, bye. I hope you found this video informative. What do you think? Tell me in the comments. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing and share it with your friends. And please support me on Patreon. And until next time, keep dreaming, everybody.